Hello, hello.
No, I can hear an echo.
Hmm.
Not anymore. Oh, can you put your volume down?
How's that?
Better. How are you, mate? You right?
I'm good. How are you? How's things?
Yeah, good.
You look fabulous and I look very shiny. I feel like the lights are being unforgiving on me this morning.
Well, I think I've got like this huge light. I mean, you've got a little one on you, right? So it's but it's all good. I quite like it.
yeah, I was gonna say you look good.
My new sponsors are apparently are going to be delighted with the look.
That's it. Yeah, look at that. It's perfect. Perfectly framed. That's what we like.
Awesome.
How's your week been? Good?
Yeah, super busy. Yours?
Yeah, wonderful. Very good. It's I don't obviously I think you guys know, well, people of the show know that we're based in Dubai, and Dubai very much seems to be alive and kicking. There is an insane amount of people here. GITEX was last week. I got an opportunity to go down there, meet some clients, and I've been going to GITEX for 22 years. Busiest I've ever seen it. Absolute chaos, insanity. But good in the sense that obviously I think it was interesting. GITEX was always seen, especially in the IT world, as I definitely need to go to GITEX if you weren't in Dubai. And I remember the CEO of one organization I was working with about kind of 18 years ago. He's like, yeah, 90% of the company have just been in Dubai last week. I feel like only 10% needed to be at GITEX. So guys, no more GITEX next year, because it was a jolly.
Right.
It was like, let's go GITEX, but actually GITEX could just be Dubai. So I felt like there was a lot of that, just because obviously, it's the first big event in that space, in the IT space, in 2 years.
Yeah.
So I think, it was a chance for people genuinely to catch up, press the flesh, say hi, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, business travel just hasn't been around, right?
No, exactly.
I've seen it. There's a couple of calls I've been on this week where people are like, "Oh, well, Expo's on in Dubai right now, yeah." Yeah, I'm thinking I should come down and sort of see you and meet you face to face. And I'm like, okay. I mean, like, it's fine. I mean,
exactly.
I kind of get it. So, it's definitely, I think, an eagerness to jump on a plane again if people haven't.
Yeah.
But cool. So it's been a couple of weeks, guys, since we've last done our show. Thanks to everyone who's jumped on board and joined us this morning so far. Great to see you. I think for a few of you, it's a little early in the morning, so we kind of appreciate that as well. Yeah, I mean, what's kind of caught your eyes in the last maybe week or two, Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, look, yesterday the kind of immediate news was, I guess, Hertz, buying 100,000 Teslas. And obviously on the back of that, I think Tesla stock jumping 14% or something insane like that.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting. I guess obviously, I mean, we're all familiar with Hertz, and it's very difficult. It's very difficult to kind of realize what the cars they're purchasing. Yeah. So it goes across the board as far as what people are interested in. Sorry, I just got a message. I was just looking at that. Must be those fancy new microphones. Okay, so apparently, guys, I've got a bit of an echo. So I'm gonna play around with my settings just while you take over. So I mean, what do you think? Like 100,000 Teslas? Yeah. What are we looking at?
Yeah, I mean, it's huge, right? And I think so. That's now the first $1 trillion car company. Right. It's also the first $1 trillion junk bond, junk stock recommendation, where people, when they first launched, were like, this company's just going to fail. That's now turned into a $1 trillion business. But I think it's just a sign of how things are heading. I've been sharing with you, I've been sort of car shopping right now. It's impossible to get a new car. There's 6-month waiting lists everywhere you go. Yeah. Tesla actually was probably the only one that had less of a waiting list.
Right. Okay.
Right. Where perhaps the parts they use obviously are different to what other manufacturers are using.
Yeah. You think there'd be more chips in a Tesla?
Well, possibly, but I mean, I don't know how much of their own chips they're manufacturing as well, right? I mean, I think they've got an advantage as a technology first company as opposed to manufacturing first business. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think it's fairly interesting in terms of how that's going. I tell you, actually, while we're talking about kind of technology stocks and things like that, Facebook produced some good results yesterday. So their profits beat expectations. But I think that's really interesting because everyone's been, I think, super cautious in terms of how sort of technology stocks and results and things like that are going to kind of pan out this quarter, since Apple did that shift, right, in terms of the privacy shift. And we've spoken about that.
That's right. Yeah.
You know, the impact of that on mobile apps and things like that. Obviously, you're the guy that doesn't let anyone have any access to anything.
That's right.
Whereas I'm kind of a little bit more open. But I think what was interesting is, I think people were expecting Facebook to be hammered perhaps more than others, but Snap had a huge hammering last week. They were like,
my stop loss might have kicked in on Snap.
But I mean, they had a 22% drop in value within a day.
Nice. I know that. Yeah.
Fair enough.
That's why I didn't put it in the news. I'd kind of try to forget about it.
Yeah, it's always a funny one, that one. But I mean,
weird because Snap last time, so Snap had a huge lift on the back of their last earnings. So I think what's interesting is, obviously, I think we haven't put it in notes, but obviously now Facebook changing their name as well. So we spoke about that kind of metaverse that he's leaning into. I'd say what's interesting is, while I was in the US, I saw a lot of Oculus ads. So there's kind of brands now that are teaming up specifically for the Oculus, which obviously, I mean, Facebook as well. It's just interesting. You know, I think we see Facebook sometimes just as Facebook, right? And there's almost like a negative or uncool association to that, I think, but people don't realize, you know, in places like South America and places like, there's none of that negativity, right? This is a tool that connects everyone's lives. And I think you and I were away when WhatsApp went down. And that's right, Instagram and Facebook, and it was literally within the space of, you know, a minute that we all were like, hey,
is WhatsApp down?
Is WhatsApp down? Then it was like, let's go on Twitter. And then obviously all the memes came out that Twitter's where people go when everything goes down. But I think that was a global outage, probably close to 5 hours in the end. I think you were flying while it kind of kicked in. But I mean, it is, we, as you know, individuals are heavily connected into that environment, and I think people forget that sometimes.
And I think the other side of it is all of the Facebook haters are also the ones saying, "Oh my God, Facebook's down, WhatsApp's down, Instagram's down." I think the impact of that business on everyone's lives. I mean, we even ran episodes in the last series specifically on WhatsApp, right? Because WhatsApp for business is significant.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think, again, people kind of, you know, it's easy to hate. You know, to hate, right? I think it's easy to, you know, criticize. It's easy to do all of those things. But the second, okay, fine, you don't like it, you don't like what we do, let's pull it, right? I mean, we just saw that kind of mass disruption, you know, globally, and it was, you know, it was interesting. I think, you know, sometimes you kind of wonder whether stuff like that gets done on purpose, right? I mean, like, you know, you hate us that much. We're always in the news. You know, you're putting us in front of the US courts all the time. You know, what happens if we don't exist, right? Does the world, you know, kind of fall apart for a few hours? And, you know, to some sort of, to some extent, it does, especially businesses that are fully reliant on WhatsApp and Instagram. And you know, Christ, I don't know what the influencers were doing during that time, but yeah,
I think they basically did. He addressed that, right? So he put out a public statement afterwards, and he, you know, specifically spoke about the lost connections with families, but then also the impact on business, because they know the impact on business, right? So I think, and look at Facebook advertising, Instagram advertising, more increasingly WhatsApp inclusion still forms a heavy part of our performance strategy for most of our clients. So, I mean, it's still highly relevant. I mean, that kind of leads in nicely to the other story that we haven't spoken about him for a while, but old Trump kind of building his own social network.
I totally missed this, by the way.
Really? Yeah. So he's basically, obviously, I mean, he's pretty much, you know, cold, right? He's out of Twitter. He's not on Facebook. He's not on Instagram. He basically got pulled from all of those platforms. So to a certain extent, socially, he doesn't have a voice, right? So what he's done is he's created this new network called Truth, of course, and basically looked to launch it. But the challenge is he didn't organize the licensing of the software properly. So potentially in 30 days, it could fall apart. But he's already got $200 million investment backing for the platform. And then day one, day one someone took at Donald Trump. It was available. So
The handle. Amazing.
someone took that.
Amazing.
And kind of, they hacked the network. So their platform, again, though, in relation to Facebook, is the fact that they're going to be a decentralized, environment that isn't impacted by media and.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be interesting, again, how, there's a few of these other networks that we've seen in the past that, we're going to be always free. We're not going to be advertised to you,
Sure.
and they speak to a small community and then they kind of, disappear. I mean, when was the last time? It's very different, but when was the last time we spoke about Clubhouse, for example, as a social network, so I think you're going to start to see possibly more of these. I wonder if similar to applications, what you saw with applications on the phone is there was a lot of applications that did everything for everybody, and people soon realized, no, you need to be very specific in what you offer. And I wonder if there's going to be some social networks on cars or social networks on gardening, or you know what I mean? I think it may be interest-led based, possibly. I don't know.
Maybe. I mean, I think if in that respect, you've almost got, Facebook groups, cover that to an extent, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's that seems to be the place where, for kind of
like-minded people come in.
I mean, and then you got the audience and everyone's already on there, right? So perhaps there's some room there. I think we should crack on with the with the main topic today.
100%.
Otherwise, we can sit here talking like this for hours. So so look, guys, again, thanks for tuning in. We've had some more people drop in since we started. It's always this time of year, Andrew, where we really kind of start looking at, really kind of aggressively looking at 2022, right?
Yep.
And I think for our business, there's a number of reasons. That's typically the time when more budgets are released, which is always great news. This time last year, we were worried if budgets were going to be released at all. I think we're a little bit more kind of hopeful this time around. But I think the reality is the turn of a year kind of brings new excitement, positivity. And people kind of really, it's just another day really, but the reality is
New Year.
There's just so much kind of is linked and associated to it.
Exactly.
And I think that perception and that kind of mindset is something that's global. And I think it gives people maybe an opportunity to kind of look back on the previous 12 months, right? What did we do? What did we achieve? Perhaps where did we go wrong? And it's almost like, okay, that turn of a year now gives you an opportunity to put things right. Or, how do we kind of
improve,
scale even further,
reset,
right?
whatever.
So if you had a great year, how do we have an even better year next
Exactly.
year? Right? And I think this is where we kind of sit and sort of advise clients in terms of what they should be doing, especially this time of year. Or perhaps even sooner. But the reality is a lot of the work I think that we put in as a company during this last quarter is all really focused around content. Right. And I think what we wanted to do is really kind of go into that in a bit more detail. And really kind of look at how that sort of content piece really plays into things like purchasing mindset, buyer mindset, how it kind of maps into things like funnel. I think we can definitely talk about that. But also just in general, right? What is it that people are actually doing right now that businesses can potentially tap into? Because the way I kind of look at it, and when I sit with our content team, for our content specifically, I say to them, look, 2022 is like a blank canvas, right? If you look for anything related to our business or our industry on Google right now, without, a 2021 or 2022 pretext, like it's busy, right? There's so much. I mean, you ask a specific question around, say, digital marketing, you get Google will throw back 35 million answers results, in the space of a second, right? So how do you kind of bypass that, right? How do you kind of say, okay, we know that this sort of content space, especially from a kind of written word and Google perspective, it's so busy, it's so fuzzy.
That's right.
Where's the opportunity? And we've tested this, I think, over the last sort of 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, definitely. I think you might have done, I think it might have been longer, 2018, you did like a recap, I think. It was like a downloadable guide, do you remember?
Yeah. So exactly. Yeah. Things like that we've done. Yep. But I think more so in the last 2 or 3 years, what we've created is a ton of 2022 specific blog content, right? And then we've looked at how we can sort of scale it up with more kind of rich media. But the blog content specifically was very much geared towards 2022 because we kind of, you know, and the mindset is very straightforward in the sense of, okay, we know that budgets are going to be released maybe in the next couple of months, right? And therefore, if budgets are going to be released, people are creating things like, you know, media plans now, or they're creating marketing plans. And if they're in that process right now, what is it that we can do to help that process, right? That research.
Exactly.
And the very kind of simple thing from our perspective was, okay, if someone's looking at, say, I don't know, what they should be doing from a digital marketing perspective next year, well, let's create some content that's focused around, say, digital marketing in 2022. Right? Because I think this is the kind of stuff that people, you know, people aren't going to start typing in, okay, cool, digital marketing in 2019, right? They're not going to go backwards. But what the kind of mindset that people have, I think, is driven by two kind of chains of thought. And the first of these is people always kind of forward thinking whenever they're creating any kind of plan or forecast by default, which is very kind of obvious. But the second one is that they want to kind of be educated on what's new and what's next, right? And so just by default, the fact that we're still in 2021 and some people haven't thought about creating content for 2022, it just creates an immediate opportunity.
Right.
I think we even beat HubSpot to the punch last year, where basically we created an article which was, HubSpot strategy in 2021, sorry.
Yeah.
And we had thousands of visitors in the back end of 2021 and January, I think up to about mid-Feb, where basically we were outranking HubSpot for something that HubSpot typically on
that space.
You know, it generated leads and actually got us some quite nice attention and stuff like that. So something as simple as that, which is, you know, ultimately, I don't know, you know, a couple of hours work can have, you know, quite significant impact on a business, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, look, obviously I've been talking a lot, but I mean, what's your kind of thoughts? What kind of conversations are you having with clients about this right now?
Yeah, I think you kind of made an interesting point there as far as the people want to know what's new, right? And I think that's always the challenge in that digital space. So, you know, we get a lot of inquiries around digital marketing. So there's a lot of people, for example, that don't necessarily know what they want, but they know they need something.
Yeah.
You know, and as you said, that people are kind of searching for information. You know, and typically it's not like there's you know, a new magic bullet or magic pill that's come out that is, you know, going to revolutionize the business with one click, or, you know, we're doing things differently like here. But there's definitely elements that you know, we'd be talking about now it kind of more vocally than we would have been doing a lot like a year ago, right? I think, you know, the consistent theme is around video-based content or visually led content that's consistent. But for example, we've spoken about it on the shows. You mentioned having a lot more WhatsApp conversations, right? So, you know, people are using that as a communication mechanism more so than email now, right? In certain parts of the world.
Okay.
So I think, you know, that again is there's just new, you know, kind of salt and pepper that's being added moving into 2022. And I think the thing is that now it's not so much impact of COVID, but definitely how things have changed. Right. And it has changed the way that people are, you know, digesting content, the way people, so you're almost going, you know, through some of these cycles at the moment now where there's kind of people now that, I don't know, there's some pushback to going back to the office space, for example, in some organizations. There's people that are like, no, you know, I'll work at 3:00, then I'll work at 11:00 at night, you know, kind of that flexibility. And I think these are some of the considerations as well that we do have to take in. It almost feels like the COVID conversation kind of was shelved, if that makes sense. So if you look at, you know, kind of that strategy and content, especially, there was a lot of COVID related content. If you remember, we were doing a lot of COVID related content. But what's interesting is it's almost like that's coming back into the conversation now because it is impactful. So it's forget it. It's not what is, it is. So how are people digesting content, for example, differently? How are people researching?
Let's talk about that.
Yeah,
Thing.
yeah.
So in terms of the types of content,
Yeah.
look, I think we've like I said, we're strong sort of advocates of the written form of content, right? In terms of, the power that has, because I think if we look at it from a funnel perspective,
Yeah.
I think that's probably the best way to kind of break this down,
Yeah.
right? So, so if we kind of look at that traditional sales and marketing funnel, well, then let's break it down maybe into top, middle, and bottom.
Yeah.
Okay, so top of funnel, by definition, is ultimately where people are researching.
That's right,
okay,
yeah.
so they're kind of, they know they've got a need,
The requirement,
they've got a problem they've got to solve,
Yeah.
And they've got to find a solution to it, right? And what they generally do is turn to Google,
Yeah.
perhaps go to Facebook groups now more increasingly. Or they'll perhaps reach out to peers or or colleagues or whatever it is, right? So that's that kind of standard top of funnel. I've got a problem. How do I kind of identify what my solution is?
Yeah.
Right. The second thing that the second part of the funnel, again, let's just define that, is the middle of the funnel. And again, this is where now perhaps they've found some potential solutions to the problem they have.
Shortlisted some of those solutions, some of those companies.
Yep.
Yeah.
So they got a short list.
Yeah.
Perhaps they've even kind of, started reaching out to some of these companies.
Yeah.
But ultimately what they're doing in this part is really kind of defining that short list.
Yeah. Evaluating it.
Refining it and basically getting to a point where they want to start having conversations, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I know there's a few of the guys on the show today who are tuned in and there's a really, we've spoken about it a million times, but the Zero Moment of Truth study by Google, if you haven't seen it, just go and Google it, right?
Just go and Google
and it was a study by Forrester and Google,
Yeah.
actually many years ago now, but it showed that mindset, right?
Yeah.
And it showed that people actually weren't going to speak to somebody until they were perhaps closer to the bottom of the funnel.
Yeah.
And so bottom of the funnel ultimately is where a company is now fully engaged. They're speaking to the prospect and ultimately they want to try and close the deal, right?
Exactly.
So let's go back to the top of the funnel. Okay. So traditionally, maybe we look at this in the way, Andrew, in terms of, 20, I don't know, 2 years ago versus next year. Okay. So almost like a 3-year variance, right? So if we look at the top of funnel now, compared to what it was. So previously, I would say most people would go to Google, and they'd say, right, I'm searching for a company that does this, right? Now, unless there's a real strong sort of brand presence and they've got an idea of who they want to work with, most people would use maybe a generic search term that describes what it is, right? So I mean, we've got Jason on the show today. Hopefully the echo's a bit better, Jason. But basically, if we look at it in terms of, say, Jason's business, where they provide, say, training content, learning management content. Apologies if I've got that badly wrong. But ultimately, if I'm searching for a company like Jason's, perhaps I'm going to go onto Google and say, right, who can help me in terms of perfect. Thank you. I've been told I'm right. So, right, looking for a company that does, creates learning content, training content, corporate training, whatever it is, right? Very vague. And then what you may add into that is some level of locality. Because if I'm based in the UAE, perhaps I'm looking for someone in Dubai.
Someone here locally,
So I might put,
in Dubai, in Abu Dhabi.
Right. So maybe learning management systems in Dubai or learning management content in Dubai or training, right? So you'd add some kind of locality to that. How do you think that's evolved? You knew it was coming.
Amazing. Love it. Okay, I'll tell you how I think it's. I think it's evolved. I think that it's evolved in a couple of different ways. So I think that hasn't gone away, right? First and foremost. So that's still the key component of search. So people are searching. I'd say now it appears as though people are investing more time in research. Okay. Now they either have that time or they may have limited budget, right? Not the kind of luxury they had previously. So even talking to one of our clients that was a Jitex, they he said our budgets are being squeezed, but I have no understanding why. We're absolutely smashing it, in his words. So even if you're an organization that is doing very well, there's still almost like a cloud of, we still have to be careful because people don't know. Right. I think because there's a certain, there's some element of uncertainty, right? The world closed down and shut down. What happens if? And there's a lot of what happens if people, right? Like what ifs, right? So I think first and foremost, people are doing a lot more research, okay? Now, because in the last 2 years when this first happened, there possibly were not as many people ready in that environment. So they weren't ready for looking for business online, or they weren't ready to, capture inquiries in that space. Yeah. They've had 2 years to pull up their socks. So whoever had a bad digital presence, or whoever didn't consider that Google space before, is there now.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So now there's more of a competitive space. So now not only people are spending more time researching, but they're actually seeing more options, right? So I think that has to be taken into consideration. Okay. I also feel as though that people sometimes now want to, they want to access information how they want to access information. So part of the, lifestyle choice of a lot of individuals now, working from home, right, working in the office, working in a cafe, there's a lot of me time. I want to do it this way. I want to do it this way. I want to do it this way. And organizations have had to be flexible in that environment. So similar to content, like I want to read that, or I want to watch it, or I want to listen to it, I want to download it, I want to share it, I want to share it in a group, I want to jump on a Slack group and have a discussion around it. I want to join a community that knows all about that, so I can ask them about these 3 companies that I've chosen, right? So I think that there's now some of that outbound activity once they've done their research as well, right? So again, looking at things like reviews, company reviews, these kinds of things, I think that trust piece has become more important as well, because a lot of organizations have shut up shop. So when they're making a decision about this, they have to do that. The last thing is that I believe that people, as part of that communication piece and that content digest, sometimes may want to accelerate the conversation down the funnel, but again, in the way they want to communicate, like WhatsApp, like live chat, right? They're happy to move themselves down the funnel faster.
Okay, interesting.
And there's now a mechanism for them to do that.
Yeah.
Right. So, we've spoken about it before, WhatsApp and stuff, but, if there's like, I don't know, a WhatsApp, and I can jump on and ask a question that I have, right? I'll most likely do that instead of spending 10 minutes researching.
Do you know, I think you raise a really kind of valid point.
I think 4 valid points, right?
4, but I think the WhatsApp one was
pretty
better.
Good. I think it was pretty good.
Yeah, let's stick to the.
You didn't expect me to answer like that.
No, that's probably the best question you've ever answered. I think in general, I think the point that really stands out is we kind of look. I think the funnel sometimes, internally yesterday in a meeting, I was saying, the funnel is your friend when you're having these conversations.
Yeah.
I think, especially when we're talking about the future, sometimes the funnel maybe isn't so much your friend, right?
Yeah.
I think because we kind of, especially when we're defining perhaps mindset, user journeys, behaviors within a funnel, right? We kind of say, look, this is where people start, this is where they kind of go, and this is where they end up. I think the reality is perhaps, some people don't want to go through that process, right?
No.
And whether that's B2B or B2C, I think we've both seen it where even deals that we've worked on where we felt, okay, this one's going to kind of drag on for a couple of months, have closed in a day, and ones that you felt, okay, this is going to close really quick, has dragged on a couple of months, right? And I think that kind of inability to kind of understand that sort of psychology and behavior and how that relates to the funnel, I think is really interesting. So I think you're absolutely right in terms of how it's evolved. I think companies need to make sure that they've got all their kind of ducks in a row when it comes to top of funnel.
Yeah.
And we can talk about that. So that's things like making sure you've got sort of informative, educational content on your website.
And reachable. Because we're dealing with a client at the moment where they've got some phenomenal content.
Right.
Phenomenal. But it's buried so deep that no one's ever going to find it.
Okay.
It's hidden.
Yeah.
They've invested heavily in this content.
Right.
And it's, you know, you'd be hard pushed, you know, where it's like, well, what about this? No, we've done that. Okay, I couldn't find that.
Where is it?
Yeah, exactly. Five different topics of very relevant content pieces that were just hidden.
Yeah.
Right. Completely hidden.
Yeah. Again, good point. I think so making sure that obviously people can access it easily, right? I think the next part of that is making sure things like Google Ads and those kinds of things are in place, because again, top of funnel, especially if you don't have kind of a strong organic presence, you know, that's going to kind of help fast track some kind of interest in your business. And then the other elements of those things, like what you said, are just making sure that, you know, video and things like that. And I think video we can talk about specifically, because I just feel
there's different types of video.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we need to talk about that, because that's just so, I guess, increasingly important. But the going back to the funnel piece, again, just having something that makes it really easy for somebody to ask a question, I think is really key now. You know, because I think if they don't find those answers on your website, and they don't then have an alternative way of asking that question, I think they very quickly press the back button. Right.
Yeah.
You know, especially again, if we go back to those research studies that we mentioned, you know, people don't want to necessarily have a sales conversation straight away, but they may want to have a kind of question answered. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's really key. And I think just in the notes, obviously you mentioned something which is so valid here. But if, you know, there's a book by a friend of ours, Michael Sheridan. And again, I think we've spoken about Marcus a few times on the show.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
But the book's called They Ask, You Answer.
Yeah.
And really it tells the story of Marcus himself, who's basically, you know, the pool guy, 2008, big recession in the States, business is about to get destroyed, and then focused on the power of content, which has basically now turned him into the biggest pool manufacturer in the US. I think it's ridiculous, right? Pays little to nothing for ads. It's all organic content, but all he did is just basically collated all the questions that his customers or prospects were asking him, and he decided to create articles on every single one of those on his website. So whenever they went to Google and said, you know, what's the difference between a fiberglass pool
and ground above pool,
right, the first website they would find would always be his. And so, you know, that's something I'd definitely recommend. And even as an approach, even in that most simplistic form, you know, find out what your customers are asking and just create content on the back of it. Because, you know, if they can't find it on your website, you're going to ask Google. And if they can't find it, you know, if a friend doesn't have an answer, they're going to go to Google.
That's right. Yeah.
And if you have got it, if you have got that content, you've just got a much better chance of really being found and, you know, engaged with, basically. Right.
That's right.
Should we talk about video and kind of maybe middle of funnel?
I think just before we touch into video, one thing that you raised there was, you know, the ability for somebody to ask a question. I think the thing is that you have to take a step back and realize that people are different. And it's sometimes it's a challenge to do that, because you think, well, no one will do that. No one's going to read a blog, or no one's going to do this. No one's going to do that. You have to remove yourself. And the way that I like to think about it is, you know, heading into a shop where you need something, there are people that will find someone straight away and go, hey, listen, I need this. That's me. And there's other people that will spend 10 minutes trying to find it. Right. So you've really got to kind of cater for all those needs. Right. There's the people that use self-service checkouts, and there's people like me that don't. Right. So because anytime I've tried to, for example, it's like, and you call in the person over, right? And no, let's just get somebody to do that, and then it's all clean. But so I think we have to realize that people behave differently, and that kind of feeds in nicely to that video piece. And I think video can be very different, right? So I think there are different types of video, and I think, you know, people should realize and understand that, right?
Okay.
I'll let you go for it.
Amazing. I think when we're talking about video, I think the challenge, I don't know whether it's a challenge, but I think this is very kind of deeply sort of correlated to time. I think is the way I kind of look at it, right?
Okay.
Because I think if you can, and we've done it in the past, where, for example, we've got a case study, and the case study is so in depth because of the data and the reports, and that when we've actually put it into a presentation, it's a 65 slide presentation, which we've actually then turned into a 1.5 minute video and walked into a meeting room and pressed play. Right. And that time piece, I think, is so significant, because I think right now, and like, for example, right, I think, again, Dubai maybe is very different to other places in the world, but we're fully open, and fully open, like what you mentioned earlier, means just traffic. I mean, just constantly stuck in traffic again, right? Going from one place to the next.
That's right.
And I hate that. For me, it's like I feel as if I've become so efficient working from home.
Yes.
But now spending 45 minutes.
Painful.
Yeah. I mean, if it wasn't to come in and see your pretty face, I just don't know if I'd bother, mate. Like, you know, so the point is that's 2 hours a day I'm losing now, right? Which was basically before allowing me to be productive. Now, the fact I can't order a self-driving Tesla car means that's not going to change anytime soon. So I can't be bashing out emails and stuff while I'm driving. But the point is I think the challenge is people are very kind of precious of time. And I think that just, you know, I think if we look at all of us, we're very conscious of time. I'd say more so than ever. And I think that's only heading in one direction, right? And I think on that basis, video becomes more and more important. Okay. And I think the technology supports it. You know, I think people are just much more comfortable now watching a video. If you're working from home, there's no issues with the sound now. Whereas before, you know, people like watching a video and not working.
Actually, that's a big thing.
Yeah.
That'd be interesting to look at some of those stats, because it was something like 92% of videos on social were watched without sound.
Yeah. Whereas and some of our videos where we do have subtitles on aren't being used. Subtitles aren't being used. Right. So people are actually now
listening to the video.
Right. And so I think there's definitely a change in sort of shift and mindset from that perspective. And so the video piece, I think, becomes stronger. So things like, I think, again, if we look at top of funnel, we've got a project at the moment where we've created an animated video. The animated video has so far got 100% success rate in terms of being seen by someone who's then interested in the product.
Exactly. Yeah.
And we're talking about a small audience. So
this is animated.
Yeah, but this is like animated explainer videos where I think rather than us kind of typing out 4 or 5 paragraphs saying, hey, here's a product, here's, you know, it's new, it's about to be launched. You send a, 90-second video, they watch it and say, actually, this looks really good, or actually this isn't for us, right?
No, that's right.
And I think that's important as well, just to really kind of qualify and disqualify.
Definitely.
So if we look at one form of video, you've got those kind of animated explainer videos, which I think are great. I think if we're looking at sort of top of funnel, maybe even, the fact that we record this webinar, for example, or this show, and we host it on our website, and we see people are actually engaging with it and they're watching it and things like that. Again, this is very much kind of top of funnel content, really.
Yeah, totally.
Because there's no sales pitch here. It's very much kind of designed to kind of help and educate and get people thinking. But ultimately, this is another form of content, which is, quite easy to produce and put together and host.
It's video content.
So I think that, that's obviously another kind of form. I think you've got sort of traditional advertorials and ads and stuff like that. I just don't know how effective they are in maybe B2B space.
I think the piece to camera is interesting. So I think, we've worked with clients in the past where in financial services where they've been doing weekly updates, and to camera, right? I think again, that's important. I think also one of the things is, and you touched there with like listening to audio. I also think that obviously there's been a huge, our personal life always impacts business as well, no matter what you do. And there's been a huge uptake in like TikTok usage, Reels, right? Instagram Reels, where people are going back to watching longer form content as well. So your minutes, your 2 minutes, your minutes and a half, all of these. So even in your downtime, and TikTok famously, they're number one in me time. So like TikTok statistically is the place to go to if you just want me time, right? You just want to kind of get away from stuff. So there's a lot of video being digested personally, and it's just a comfort level, right? It's just kind of a comfort level to kind of then watch that. If anything's to go by for like Squid Games and Netflix usage, that it feels like more and more people are watching Netflix as well. There's just even the Dune got released on HBO and they had 1.8 billion people viewing it.
Right.
1.8 billion.
Huge.
It's crazy. So I think that video piece is impacting, our personal life, which ultimately you're comfortable then, like watching video on about a product that you want to see, right?
Yeah. I think also, I mean, we shouldn't overlook the role. And I think moving sort of further down the funnel from a video perspective, but we shouldn't overlook the role that video plays within sort of proposals.
Yeah.
Again, we're in that kind of very digital space where maybe, and again, hopefully we get to that point where not everyone wants to kind of see each other again, right?
Yeah.
I think we're seeing a bit of a shift at the moment where face-to-face meetings are definitely on the rise.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking that's just more because I haven't seen you for ages. I want to see you.
That's what it is. Yeah.
But I think once I see you, perhaps I don't need to see you again for a while.
Exactly,
and I'm hoping it kind of transitions back into that. And if that does, then we're in that kind of digital space again, where if I'm trying to sell you a product or a service, I think it's important for you to know who I am, how I function, rather than just for emails, right? And Zoom calls. And I think we've kind of experimented this a lot in terms of, not just sending people a proposal, but actually videoing ourselves running through the proposal, right? Yeah. And again, video has that the opportunity to spread, right? To be shared. Whereas again, we have a great meeting, and yet I need to now bring somebody else into the equation. All I'm going to be doing is ultimately sort of paraphrasing some of the key bits that you told me, which I remembered, and then I'll share it. Whereas I think when you've got a video which explains everything in your own voice in the right way,
it's familiarity.
It's just easier, right? Like, here's a 5-minute video that explains it all.
Exactly, yeah.
And I think, the efficiencies, the personalized touch, I think all of these elements come into play, right?
And I think the trackability piece, so people still don't honestly realize that things are tracked, I don't think.
Sure.
The kind of, we understand it because obviously we're in that space, but regular folk don't really kind of get the fact that things tracked. So if somebody does watch a video, they don't realize it's being possibly tracked, right? That they're watching it. So I think you can get that immediate feedback on there as well. I think the thing is that the kind of, because we are so busy, I think there's also, almost like a thought process that, okay, yeah, we had that meeting and it was great, but bear in mind that individual themselves probably had a busy day as well.
Yeah.
Right, and possibly had 6 meetings. So just of the reminder of a video piece is a break from monotony, right? And I think that when we've looked at, I think previously when we've kind of looked at even our content, from like a proposal perspective, there was, an element of it's chunky, it's thick, it gets printed off, it sits on someone's desk. People are not back in their office.
Yeah.
I mean, my sister had her in-laws out, and they had to print out a mountain of paperwork for, their in-laws to go back to the UK for PCR and everything. And she had to go to like a Desco, like a print easy place, because it hasn't got a printer, right? For that volume,
sure.
a little desktop printer. And I think that's it. A lot of people don't have that. So an ability to share. Plus as well, I mean, we see people share video across WhatsApp. It's easier to share and watch a video than it is a 20-page document on a phone, right? I think that's also it. So we're spending a lot more time on these things.
Well,
right?
and I think that kind of underlines it, I think, because we're now talking about easier technology, which has never been easier to produce decent quality videos.
No, exactly.
Again, there's a ton of tools out there from a desktop perspective.
Yeah.
But it makes sense, and just the fact that we can obviously digest for content on so many different channels, I think it just makes total sense that companies need to kind of almost have a complete video strategy, which is very different to what video strategy would have been a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah, and going back to what does 2022 look like? Video's got to play an important piece.
Yeah.
and not just from a content perspective, but I also think the communication piece, like you mentioned. So when you are moving further down that funnel, it's far, easier to kind of produce a video. Hey, listen, look, based on the discussion, we did this, and this, right? And kind of visualize that, right? I just want to go over the points again. This is the revision to your proposal. This is why I've changed this. This is why I've changed this, right? Again, helping people kind of understand. I mean, I did a mini video for a client yesterday. They were like, hey, listen, I'm meeting the board of directors. Can you send me this? I was like, well, I can send you a video if you want. Yeah, okay, cool. Could you do that? Yeah. It was like a WhatsApp video. I mean, it wasn't even from a desk and stuff, but they wanted a reference piece, again, in your own language, right? Because there seems to be more of a comfort level associated to that now.
Yeah,
they want to get the message across, right? They kind of want to push that out there,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, Andrew, we've got about 10 minutes, so I just want to
wow, look at that.
I just want to kind of talk about some of the other pieces of content, right? Because like we've spoken about website content, maybe in blogs, and I mean, downloadable guides, I think it's fairly obvious. Everyone's sort of, comfortable with what those are. What about things like comparison docs? What's your experience with those?
Yeah, I mean, I think the comparison piece, obviously, we see this a lot in HubSpot. So there's G2, which is obviously a website that compares technology stacks, platforms, etc. This, we reference this all the time. So, there's if people do want to go in and do that, we've got our own comparison pieces. So I think we've got a great article about Salesforce versus HubSpot, blog that obviously we've written, which is a great comparative piece, on that. We've done price comparison in the past as well. So I think, they help people kind of frame a conversation, right? Especially when there's comparative tools, right? I think it definitely helps people frame a conversation.
Yeah, I think in the software space for sure, there's a lot of room for this, right? Wanda, I've not really seen a kind of one company versus another company type blog that's outside of a software space. But you see, I mean, we've done another one which is HubSpot versus Zoho.
That's it,
And actually, I mean, one of the tactics there is very simply, if someone's actually searching for Zoho, we've intercepted that search with that article.
Yeah, right? I think that's an interesting one actually, because there are comparisons that are made that shouldn't be made. So there's a lot of, we talk about it, apples to apples, but for example, in that specific instance, a lot of people compare like a Zoho to a HubSpot where there isn't a comparison.
Yeah.
Right. It's, there's sometimes people that have comparative matrix. I mean, Zoho want to compare themselves to HubSpot, but, Zoho is more Freshworks or kind of that, that more entry level kind of piece. So I think that also is a component, right? It's kind of making comparisons on going back to Michael Sheridan, that was questions we were getting asked.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay,
which platform? Yeah, what platform should I go with?
What platform should I go with? I'm looking at this one and this one.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we're getting asked that question. So, then we'll go that. And similar to, do I get an above ground pool or a below ground pool, right? It's questions that you're being asked.
Yeah.
So I think, that those comparison pieces should be based on, I mean, look, in comparison pieces, we've got top fives, right? So top fives, top tens, Google love that. People love that, right?
Yeah, we've got articles, and I think this is quite interesting as well. But I mean, in your space, if you're comfortable talking about your competitors, talk about your competitors.
Yeah,
we've got content on our site which is like, maybe the top 10 digital agencies,
top 10 SEO agent. Yeah.
And we talk about our competitors in there, and we're not basically going in there saying, look, work with us, all the others are rubbish. There's nothing like that at all. We give a very kind of fair, objective review of what we believe their strengths are. And it's all positive. It's never negative. But we know people are searching for that, right? If people are searching for the top 5 agencies, we want them to potentially find our content and basically
I think you'll see it in the automotive industry. That's another space at the moment, but the automotive industry seems to be heavily reliant on like vloggers and things like that. They don't seem to produce much of their content that's comparative as a brand. So I think some of the bigger brands, you know, rely on other people to kind of push that message out.
And that's what's going on at the moment.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
I've seen that again when I was researching, you know,
Right. Yeah.
right. And I was like, actually, I don't even know what this card compares to.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then actually, there's local sites here that do a really good job of saying, actually,
this is this,
this is how it relates, this is how you compare, these are the features.
Yeah.
And again, they're smart because they've now also got inventory. Right, for maybe one of those or both of those. But they're pulling me in because I've got a question that I want to ask. And I think, you know, and again, I think it's looking at your industry and saying, okay, well, what is it that we can do in terms of creating content that helps me speak to people that I wouldn't ordinarily speak to, people that wouldn't necessarily find my business on search engines or on social media, but what content can I create? And actually then when I create that content, what form does that content need to be in, right? I think those are really like the key points.
Yeah, I think, I mean, one of the good ones in the, which seemed very irrelevant, but highly relevant, was like Zoopla, I think, back in the day for real estate in the UK, where they were writing content about schools and shopping malls, and, you know, because that's what's in this area, right? So people are looking to relocate, and it's not just about how much my house is going to be worth or appreciation. It's, is there any schools nearby? Is there, you know, parks? Is there kind of national trust? Is there anything like that? I mean, I think Bayou doing a good job of that here locally, right? So they're writing things like top 10 places to eat at Expo. It's completely irrelevant, right? But actually, is it? You know, is it irrelevant? Because basically, people that come to Expo, they may be looking to rent a place, they might be then looking to buy a place. So actually, there is, you know, a kind of
still a bit of a stretch.
It's a stretch, but I think what's interesting is that if you've got the volume of content, it's that long tail approach. Right. So I think previously, you know, we've spoken about it where hotels would be like, I want to jump on the keyword rent a car. Why? Because people rent a car, they're going to come on holiday. No, but I think the thing is, from a content perspective, it does have some relevancy. You know, if you kind of look at an entire content strategy and you're not running out of ideas or running out of things to talk about, but you can start to move out to peripheral, right? That still has some relevancy to your business.
No, true.
Once you've done the basics.
Yeah, look, and I think the other side of it is, and again, a few minutes left, but what's happening, and we spoke about it at the very beginning of the show, where you know, more and more people are still turning to Google. Google are making more money. Google operates on an auction-based system, which ultimately means that the cost of the click just keeps increasing. Right? And I think the challenge right now for a lot of businesses, is spiraling Google costs. Okay. And how do you kind of offset those costs on Google with you know, cheaper ways of generating traffic? And I think that long tail approach that you spoke about, that maybe the Bayou.coms and people like that are going for, makes a lot of sense. But really kind of think about that for your own businesses, because this is a real problem. We sit with clients and they're like, this year, you know, the cost per click's gone up. And we're like, look, there's now 20 more competitors that are basically out there bidding in your space. And that challenge is forever going to be a challenge. And those clients where we're saying, look, the only way to really offset this now is to basically create more quality organic content. You've got to create content in volume. But at least that way, what you're doing is offsetting maybe what you're paying in terms of those clicks with free clicks, right? And the trade-off is very much as either you pay for your clicks or you don't, right? There's no kind of hybrid approach here.
That's right.
And so, you know, that's really, I think, part of that kind of moving forward as well. And again, you know, videos and things like that are featured very richly within search results. You know, so I think it's just taking advantage of that, maybe looking at the, you know, your kind of own search space for your business. Understanding that for you to grow in 2022, you're going to need X number of visitors that convert into X number of leads or prospects that then converts into X number of customers, right? But that if you don't get those people coming onto your site in the first place, you know, obviously those other numbers are kind of hit, right?
I think more so than ever now, you've got to kind of disband they're not my competitor. Right. It happens a lot where you do a search for a product or service and you'll sit with a client and, well, they're not my competitor. Yeah, they are. Right. So they're appearing ahead of you, or they're close to you, they're next to you in the search. They're a competitor. Oh no, they do things differently. They do. Okay, fine, but they're still ranking against the same keywords. Cool. I think it'd be good. What's the? I don't have it to hand, but on the back of this, what is the name of that website where you type in keywords and it gives you a whole host of questions that people ask? Tell the audience.
Ask the audience or something.
Ask your audience. Yeah, that's it. I think I'll have a quick search for
Okay.
that while you're wrapping up.
But yeah, guys, we kind of run out of time a little bit today. But again, thanks for tuning in. We've had people kind of coming
Answer
in.
the public.
Answer the public. Answer the public.
Answerthepublic.com.
Play around with that. That's a great tool.
I'll put it in chat now, guys, for everyone on there.
Okay, awesome.
There we go.
That's gone to the wrong one.
No, it's okay. I'm doing it now.
Okay. So yeah, look, guys, thanks for tuning in. We're going to be, I think, over the next, I'd say 6 weeks or so, really kind of hammering hard on the 2022 strategy piece.
Yeah.
Everything we share, guys, is very much kind of experience based. It's it's strategies that we've either employed for ourselves or for clients, and very much kind of designed to kind of really make sure that we're helping to kind of position your business, or helping you to position your business as you need, kind of moving into the new year. Yeah. So again, we're very open to any questions, feedback.
Definitely.
Feel free to participate in any of these. Drop us an email for our website, so digitalnexa.com. And then, just, I think that's it, right?
Yeah,
anything
perfect.
On your side?
It's good. No, good stuff. Good being back, guys. Like Amit said, we're going to be focusing and hammering down on 2022 over the next few weeks. So I look forward to kind of you tuning in again. Remember, you can listen to the podcast if you're listening already. Thank you very much. We seem to getting some mad numbers on the podcast. So back to, I think there's more people in the car listening to podcasts.
I think so. Yeah. So I mean, we didn't even talk about podcasts, but again, in terms of content, just as a kind of like, let's squeeze it in for the last 30 seconds. we obviously use this entire show and turn that into a podcast.
That's right.
And as Andrew said, the visibility on the podcast is incredible. So again, these are kind of very simple things to put into play, but or very simple to execute things to put into play. So potentially impactful for your businesses.
Definitely. Good stuff. Thanks, Amit.
Thanks, Andrew. Have a good
week. See you. Bye.